who has been one of the most pivotal role playing in taking HubSpot to a 6,000% growth rate. So I again repeat, 6,000% growth rate, building the team from 1 to 450. And there are a couple of articles on Mark's way of sales management and sales strategies. I voraciously search for those, Google and various on places. I take those printouts, underline it out, write on the borders, have implemented quite a thing on sales management suggested by Mark. Quite a few things he suggests on hiring. And there's a huge piece of nugget. I was really wondering out if we can get, India lacks such great salesmen. India has merged majorly into advertised companies. We lack on salespeople, sales, leaders like this. I was really wondering if I can have an opportunity to connect with Mark. We requested, and it happened. Mark is an MIT Solon School of Management pass out, and with those things we start up. Mark, I will like to, if you can speak something about you before we, start firing the questions and taking it ahead.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Sudeep. You can hear me okay, correct?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for having me today. I don't remember how we got connected, Sudeep. I think you reached out to me on an email, and always excited to chat with entrepreneurs. That's kind of my passion, and I'm an entrepreneur myself, and we've had a good run with it at HubSpot. So, I've taken a very, I'd never really built a sales team before, and being sort of an MIT guy and a quant, I took a very data-centric approach to doing this, which I think probably resonates with the Indian entrepreneur culture as well. So, hopefully you can kind of take a little bit away. I mean, a lot of the stories that I have to tell are not like, you should do this and you should do that. They're more just like, this is what I did, and here's the stuff that didn't work, and here's the stuff that did work. But yeah, we've had a good run. I mean, don't give me too credit for HubSpot's success. I mean, I was surrounded by an all-star team. We had an all-star vision, and I was there to kind of reap the benefits of it so far. And we've had we've been able to scale the team substantially on the revenue side, and hopefully we can keep it going. So excited to walk you through that early parts of that journey.
Mark, in between, can you also switch on your webcam? If some people out here will like to look at you, right? Let
me see if I can do that here.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
Right.
You guys can hear me okay?
Right. Absolutely, Mark.
Okay. Good deal. So how would you like to go, Sudeep? Do you want to do questions, or do you want me to walk you through some of the some basic slides, or what would you like?
There are some of the interviewing questions with most of these CEOs here in the floor.
Okay.
And quite a few of them are VP sales. So
Great.
they have these questions in their mind, and that's what some common questions I want to ask you.
Great.
Now, while researching about your style of selling, I have seen that you suggest turning to science and data whenever possible to make sales management decisions more scientific rather than artistic. My question to you is how to make it more scientific and less on star salesmanship, super salesman cape. Not depending on that, having a system which even an average salesperson brings in a predictable results.
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of the science and data was less around how the salesperson acts and more about how you select, train, and manage the salespeople. And it gives the salesperson themselves a lot of autonomy to operate and sort of empowerment to be successful within sort of the box that you draw for them. So my basic principle was my mission was predictable, scalable revenue growth, and there were 4 tactics that I wanted to create a scientific approach to achieve that mission. The first tactic was, how can I hire the same successful salesperson every single time? And how hiring is so important in this journey. I mean, out of anything else, it's the most important thing to hire the right people. And I wanted to be able to use data to guide me in those decisions to maximize the likelihood that I was picking the right people. That was number one. Number two was, as I brought them into the organization, they needed to be ingrained in the organization. They needed to be trained. They needed to understand how to be successful. And in a lot of organizations, they have you sit next to the best salesperson. That's your training, right? And that's not predictable in my book, right? So I wanted to create a very formal training program with tests and examinations that they would have to pass. So I had this viewpoint of predictability in terms of people coming out of training and how ready they were. Right? That was number two. Number three was, in a lot of sales organizations, especially in startups, one of the big issues that I see preventing them from scaling is on the demand generation side, right? And where are salespeople finding new opportunities to go after? And I wanted to go out and create a very predictable way of generating the same quantity and quality of leads every single month for those salespeople to go after, right? That was number three. And then number four was a way to hold them accountable to working those leads in the same way, right? So just defining a sales process for them and using data and science and metrics to holding them accountable to that behavior. Okay? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. So simply put. I don't know. I will like to know about what's there in Boston. Here in India, sales is not a career of choice. It's more of a compulsion. What's your viewpoint out there, and how it is in your part of the world?
Yeah, it's a little bit of around the same dimension. I mean, you can't go to school and major in sales, right? Which is pretty ironic, because as you get out in the in business, it's typically a big driver of any business, especially startups, right? I mean, I think a lot of people say in the tech startup world, you're either building products or you're selling products. Like that is like, those are the two key roles. And it's kind of funny that you can't major in it. I mean, more and more schools are trying to formalize it, and I've been helping many of them to do that, and that's exciting. I hope we can make some inroads there. The people that go into sales, it's here in the United States, it has a little bit of a reputation of what's the right words, like, I don't know, unethical, like slickness, like people are always concerned that a salesperson is going to rip them off, that they're like, have these magic tricks. There's a little bit of that. I mean, that's going away with because the consumer has so much empowerment these days in the internet that salespeople like that aren't successful, but it has a little bit of that, dimension to it. And but a lot of people actually do end up going into sales. It's a quite lucrative career here in the States. They tend to be like really competitive athletes that go into it. It's becoming more and more like I have a graduate degree from MIT. I have a lot of people from Harvard and Stanford that come into sales now. So it's becoming a career that a lot of people look up to. And if you look at the CEOs, even of the top Fortune 500 companies in the United States, a lot of them came up through sales. Right. So it's kind of looked at as like pretty important function to get under your belt if you do want to excel as a leader in the future.
Right. Wonderful. And people out there, I cherish, I dream that my kids grow up to become a salesman. And Mark is one of the few people. Mark's father, Rick, has been a well-known salesperson. There are quite a few articles of it which we use in our in our training periods. Right, Mark? You have been you have been inspired by him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it wasn't like he was my dad growing up, and I was like, oh, I want to be a sales guy. It wasn't like that. He's a remarkable salesperson and a remarkable sales coach. It was kind of like I started my career in technology. I was sort of an engineer undergrad, and then I really fell in love with entrepreneurship and did a bunch of startups. And I was CEO of my last startup, and then when I joined HubSpot, it was just they needed help. When there were like 3 or 4 people, you know, we needed to bring in customers, and that's what I was working on. And then I did pretty well at it in the beginning, and there was an opportunity to build the sales team that they wanted me to do, and that's kind of how I stumbled into it. Coming out of business school, I wanted to do sales or marketing or both, and that's how I kind of stumbled into it. And of course, I called on my dad. I had a number of mentors help me through the process thus far, and what my dad is very good at is he's very good at sort of the face-to-face, not the face-to-face, but like the actual sales call.
Right.
You know what I mean? Unlike some of my other mentors who were able to help me with, you know, building the team, the strategy, the comp plan, the structure, you know, the hiring, the training, so, you know, setting the territories, etc. He's really good at like the one-to-one sales call and how to train a salesperson how to navigate that call. So, you know, I think one of the biggest lessons he taught me was the perception that many people have on great salespeople is that they give this really great presentation. They're just very convincing. They get up in front of a crowd or they get in front of a meeting and people are like, wow, that was amazing. Let me buy what you have.
Right.
And that's not the case. I mean, when I look at our best salespeople and what they do, that is not what they're amazing at. What they're amazing at is they have this way to go in and win over the trust of the individual on the other side of the phone or the other side of the table relatively quickly. And like they have a lot of different ways you can do that. You can be really smart, you can ask good questions, you can go to a good school, you can dress well, you can be good looking, like you can love the same baseball team, like however you build that trust quickly, you do that.
You do that.
And then most importantly, they leverage that trust to ask questions to understand the context of the person, the other person. Like, what are they trying to do in the short term here? What are their goals? What are their biggest problems? How do they think they're going to fix them? Where is their head at? And once they understand that, they can assess whether they can help this person or not, right? If they have the solution to whatever that person is worried about, you're going to close 90% of those deals. I mean, you just have to present it in the context that they're thinking about it, in the words that they're using, in the industry that they're in, and you're going to win 90% of the deals. If they're worried about something that you don't have the solution for, it's an uphill battle. You essentially have to take a provocative approach now to provoke them that they're worried about the wrong thing.
Right.
And they really should be worried about something else. And you really should only do that if you truly believe that, right? You shouldn't steer them away from an important problem just because you don't have the solution to that. A lot of people just aren't thinking about the problem right, and you have to provoke them and educate them and kind of teach them how to be thinking about the problem, and then hopefully your solution is aligned with the solution, with the you know, on how to solve that problem. But that's a much harder you know, context to win, and that's just, you know, you have to try to win those. But at least you understand the context you're playing in. So that really is, it's less about these people who can give unbelievably convincing presentations, just walk in with their PowerPoint deck and everybody buys. And it's more about building that trust and navigating that discovery process to truly understand the context of this buyer. You know?
Right. Gaining the trust opens the prospect. Now, in a world where there is no professionally trained salespeople, and where you have repeatedly said that hiring is so important, what is that few attributes that you look for during the interview?
Yeah. So the thing that I found was interesting was The answer to that, I'm gonna give you my answer. I'm gonna tell you the 5 attributes that I look for, and I'll tell you how I look for them. But I will caveat it with that answer is unique to HubSpot's context. And that's another thing that I discovered was every sales context and every buyer is different, and the ideal salesperson for each one of those contexts is a little bit different. So I can tell you a story that one of the first 10 salespeople I hired, I did a lot of networking to source the top talent in the Boston area. And I was fortunate there was a large team here. They had probably 800 salespeople of a big company. And I was able to recruit the #1 person from that company. When we were like nothing, no one even knew what HubSpot was. Right. But this person, for whatever reason, thought we were going to be the next big company, and they were right to some degree. Right. And they really wanted to jump on board. This person was making a lot of money, #1 out of 800 reps. And the company itself had a very commoditized product. Right? It was Monster.com. They were basically they were selling job ads, right? And that's a very different sale than what HubSpot was at the time. Like literally, this person would just get on the phone, say, "Hey, it's so and so from Monster.com," and people knew what pitch was coming. People knew that they either had jobs to hire or not, and they kind of knew what this pitch was going to be about. And the sales context was very transactional. Deals were done in 10 minutes. The presentation was done in 2 minutes. They were making hundreds of calls a day. It was just, boom. You come over to HubSpot, and it's like you get on the phone and like, "Hey, it's so-and-so from HubSpot." And they're like, "What's HubSpot?" And you're like, "Well, it's inbound marketing software." Like, "Well, it's inbound marketing." Well, it helps you get found online through Google and social media so you can generate leads. That sounds great. How do you do that? It's just this like evangelical sale that was so different in context. And that person, they did fine with us. They did okay, but they were not the #1 because it was such a different context, right? So what I did, the process that I use, I think is extremely useful. And this sounds like a process. It sounds like a process you'd use when you're like 50 people, but no, I used this when we were hiring our first salesperson. And what I did was, pretty basic. I just wrote down 10 characteristics that I thought would be important for someone to have when I hired them as a salesperson. And I was very thorough in defining what those characteristics are and very thorough in how I would grade them against those characteristics. So, like, what would a score of a 1 versus a 3 versus a 7 versus a 10 feel like? And for every single interview I did and every single hire we made, I scored them against that criteria. And a little while into the situation, I probably like 6 hires in. Now some of these people had been with us for 6 months or so. Okay. A couple of them were really good, and a couple of them were mediocre. And I could actually go back to the interview score sheet and kind of see what did I observe in the interview that's starting to correlate. And it wasn't that long, maybe like a dozen hires in, we were about a year in then, where I had enough data points to run a regression analysis, right? So not everybody gets to this stage, but like this is really what we're talking about, where you literally could have a predictive algorithm around your criteria and your, the success that people could have within your organization, right? So, so through that process, I was able to kind of ask myself every quarter or so, like, do we have the right criteria? If some of these criteria are not correlated at all, and I should remove them, and for the people that are succeeding or the people that are failing, am I missing something? Is there a pattern here that I'm missing, right? So it's that process that I think it's important. Now, the 5 criteria that we look for that did correlate most statistically, and I think it actually applies to a lot of tech companies. #1 is coachability.
Coachability.
Right? So how coachable, how coachable is that candidate to learning quickly, right? So I'll tell you how I assess for that. Number 2 is curiosity, right? So, do they have a natural style at like asking questions and uncovering that pain and opportunity, and does it feel genuine, and are they good at it? Number 3 is intelligence. So how quickly can they learn new concepts and then communicate them to an audience? Really important to us for a fast-changing environment. I think really important for a lot of startups too. Number 4 was prior success, right? So, I mean, I did say that like not every single successful salesperson before applies to your context, but it is an important driver. And I do look for where they ranked in their last sales teams. If they didn't come from sales, I look what they've succeeded with in life, in terms of like sports or clubs or any other professions that they might have had. Like, have they really been at the top of their game? And number 5 is work ethic, which is very hard to assess. It can often be done in sort of like backdoor in reference checks and that kind of stuff. But those are the 5. So getting back to coachability, number 1, the majority of my interview is a role play. And what I will say is, hey, Sudeep, this is, you're interviewing for the job. It's like, I'm going to set a role play up. You are a HubSpot salesperson, and I am a VP of marketing at a security software startup here in Boston. And last night I came to the HubSpot website and I downloaded a free trial. And that is a lead on your desk this morning. So you call that lead and let's see how you do. So we go, and you do the role play for like 10 minutes, and I'm watching a couple of things like how natural you are with the questions. Do you just get right into the pitch? Do you know something about our product? I'll challenge you with a few questions, whatever it might be. But most importantly, at the end, I'll say, okay, Sudeep, that was great. How do you think you did? And I have you self-assess how you did and see how reflective you are on your ability. And then I'll say, okay, here's one thing I think you did well, and here's one area where I think you can improve. And I'll literally get up on the whiteboard and I'll start coaching them on their sales process. And we have a little dialogue going on. And, if they're glassy-eyed during that process, that's not a good sign. But if they're taking notes, they're engaged, they're asking questions, that's a really good sign. And then I have them redo the role play based on the coaching to see if they actually improve. And the second time, like, they really mess it up most of the time. You know what I mean? It's a stressful situation. It's 10 minutes of coaching. It's a hard situation, but it's just the effort that I'm looking for. And sometimes I find someone that actually does improve, and wow, am I excited about a candidate like that. As long as the other things check out, I mean, if I was able to move the needle in 10 minutes of coaching, imagine what it's going to be like after a day or a week or a month. I mean, to get this person into our system is going to be a really exciting situation.
There is no shortcut to it. You give, even if you have a time bound for hiring, you are in less of your manpower, you need it to hire early, you don't play the shortcut trick there, right?
That's right. That'll cost you. I mean, I actually made that mistake a few times where, as you start to scale, I'm envious of my colleagues in engineering and marketing and other functions where, if they miss a hire 1 month or a quarter or 2 people quit and, like, they just have to hire them again. I mean, yes, productivity goes down, but it is what it is. In sales, like, you're behind your numbers if you miss your hiring targets. Like, you've set your targets for the year, and you need those salespeople to be in their seats. And, of course, you have to factor in, like, attrition and all that kind of stuff. But if you miss a hiring target or attrition goes up for a little bit, you can't get to your goal. So you have that pressure to make those hires. But even under that pressure, if you don't feel, really good about these hires, you do not want to get into a situation where you're just putting butts in seats. That creates more of an issue than missing. I'd rather miss a hiring target than hire a B or C candidate. I really would.
Wonderful. Wow. One of the anxiety, how to test intelligence? Is that psychometric test? I mean, how do you test the intelligence out there?
Yeah. What I mean if you double click on intelligence in our hiring formula, what I'm really talking about there is learning curve,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
how quickly can I learn information,
Hmm.
not just in like a surface level, but literally to the level that they can explain it. They really understand it and they can teach it. That's really what I mean by learning curve.
Hmm.
So what we essentially do is, we really look at the interview process as sort of the start of training, right? It's like, yeah, we can go over your resume and go over your last job and go over a bunch of stuff, but it's like, what I'm more into is like, hey, listen, here's 5 blog articles about what we do, and here's an ebook about how inbound marketing works. Read these things, and then let's do a role play on your next call. Like literally, let's start training right now. So that's how we look at learning curve, is just if we can expose them to a consistent set of information and they're going into the interview process not having a clue on how a company ranks high in Google, for example, and then we start like exposing them to information on how that works and then start testing them on it in live role plays, that gives me a pretty good sense of learning curve. It gives me a pretty good sense of like how quickly they're able to take this information and truly understand it so they can present it back to me, you know?
Wow, wow. It's a lot of things around the attitude and the ways to check it. Right before we go, of course, there is a lot of application of technology over the outbound sales and the inbound sales, right? I primarily am a very great fan of Signals. Thanks for launching it, right? Amazing. We really come to know real time people opening up, and it does help us, right? Some insights of the technologies that you are using, which helps the people out there, outbound, inbound, if you can share some
Yeah,
secrets
sure.
out there.
Yeah, so in addition to just the data, a big part of our mission too was to leverage technology to create a better buying experience for our customers and create an easier selling experience for our salespeople. And that's, I think there's a huge space, honestly, as I see like some really good companies here in the States blowing up. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, this is a huge space that's going to blow up. This isn't like really CRM. It's more like sales enablement. I think CRM was sort of like for the sales manager and the company to organize their funnel and that kind of stuff, and actually create a lot of work for the salesperson. The tools I'm talking about here are tools that like just the salesperson loves. It just makes their job 10 times easier, right? So we put a lot of effort into that type of technology internally, and over the last year, we've loved the technology so much, and we've had so many people ask us about it in my speeches and other things that we've commercialized a lot of it. In sort of it's a free tool to start. I mean, it's a freemium app, so there's a lot of opportunity for people to kind of check it out. So it's at getsignals.com for those people that want to check it out. Can you see my screen, Sudeep? Can I show you
Yes, yes,
people it
yes,
real quick?
absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so if I go into my
Friends, to all
so
of those, a few of my friends knows it. To all those, I use Signals that, of course, Mark is showing you real time. I use Signals to know
yeah,
when people are opening my mails real time. Please.
right. So I'm in Gmail. It also works for Outlook, and it also works for Apple Mail, and it also works on the iOS for if you have an iPhone. Um, so you may have seen during the presentation today a few notifications pop up down here. Those are people opening my emails, and it tells me at that point. So the first one was just so many people in sales just wake up in the morning, bring up their alphabetical list of people to call, and start calling. And they have no idea of the prior emails and phone calls they've made, who's actually engaged with them, who's opened the email, who's visited the website, who's followed them on social media. So that was the first major app that we looked to build, was to get people to just to know that and to kind of organize their day and prioritize their time on the people who are already engaging with their stuff. So what our salespeople do is they kind of come up here if they come back from a meeting or wake up in the morning, and there's a little Signals icon in their email, and they just click on it. And there are all the people who've opened up my emails in the last half hour or so. And this, so there's Daniel DeBow, right? He's actually the CEO of Ripple that became work.com at salesforce.com. So he opened up something. He's been helping me out some of the Toronto stuff. So right now, Daniel's thinking about me. I guarantee you, if I call Daniel's cell phone right now, even though he's a really hard guy to get a hold of, he'll pick up the phone. And he'll be like, Mark, that's so funny. I was just thinking about you. So this really helps me as a salesperson to know who to call next and which of my efforts are actually working. All right, so the thing that I can do too, as I'm working, I always, when I'm writing an email, I always hit compose, right? And you'll notice that the signals is already turned on, right? So this little checkbox down here just means that all my emails are going to be tracked. Nothing pops up for the user. There's no like, hey, this person is tracking your email. It just all happens kind of behind the scenes, right? And as I put information in here, I actually can choose templates. We had some specialists like Jill Conrath, and we've put our own top performing sales templates in here that I can just choose, and it will pre-populate that sort of the email with the template really quickly right from the email. I can log this automatically in my CRM, so it saves me all the time if I'm using like Salesforce.com or a CRM, and I can actually choose to schedule the email as well based on when I would like to send it. Sometimes I do work on the weekend, but no one's on email on the weekend, so I'd schedule it for sort of 8 a.m. on Monday morning, right? Make sense, Sudeep?
Right, wonderful. To all those friends, to some of your mail, you will get someone opened your mail which just appeared, is because when it is marked to quite a few people, you make a CC the mail to quite a few people. That time it appears. Am I right there, Mark?
That's right. So you see this one here. This is something we had going on with eBay, and this email was sent to like 3 people. And this isn't really a limitation of signals. It's a limitation to just email technology and some of the stuff that we're using here, that when that happens, you just know that someone opened it. Now, in a lot of cases, like that doesn't really matter to me. Like what matters to me on this particular deal is the decision maker. The people that were on this were the HubSpot people as well as the decision maker. And I actually can filter out opens from anyone from the HubSpot IP. So I can go ahead and assume that that was the decision maker that opened. So it doesn't often affect things, but that is the reason why that happens. The only other thing that I comment on is on the other side of the fence, when it came to prospecting, right, and looking for new companies to call, lots of times what would happen, and this is how HubSpot would do it, is these people would be like, we'd have these salespeople that are like, oh, I need to find new companies to call. So they'd be like, well, there's a whole space in sort of mobile analytics. And any of these mobile analytics software companies out there, I bet you they would be really good fits for HubSpot. So let me do a Google search and see who's in mobile analytics. So Mixpanel and Flurry and Localytics and Countly and all these Byte Mobile, all these companies are in here, right? So well, Localytics looks interesting. So let me go to Localytics. And it's like, oh, wow, it's a real company. This actually looks pretty good. So what folks would do from here is they'd go into the CRM to see if Localytics is already being called on. And if it wasn't, they'd be like, great, it's not called on. So then they go into LinkedIn and figure out who the executives are. They do some research online to figure out what their email patterns are so they can find their email patterns. They'll go into some data source to figure out how many employees and how much revenue they have, and they type all that into the CRM. It literally took like 20 minutes to source each lead, right? So our guys were spending 2 hours and getting like, I don't know, 10 or so leads into our system. So we developed this technology that just does it all, right, as part of Signals. There you go. I click this little icon. You'll notice as I'm surfing the web, there's a little icon now. It tells me everything. How big the company is, the revenue size. It tells me if it's already in Salesforce.com or not. It gives me the executive team, which I could actually filter based on, if I call on sales or marketing. And, I can click in. So here's the CEO. I can actually click in to view his information. And and then I can add any of these contacts directly to my system. And then if
So,
I really like that lead, I'm like, oh, well, here's 8 other companies just like them, right? So Fixu, here's another one. So this one looks pretty good too. Let me check out what their situation is. And, you know, there's 24 records already in our system on Fixu. And, you know, I can add a lead around some of these people to it. I can claim one of these leads, and I can move on to the next one. So this is like, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much our salespeople love this tool. Right? This is something we built for ourselves 4 years ago, and the productivity of our sales reps went up so much, you know, because they literally were now sourcing like 20 leads in. I mean, it took like, you saw that, it took like 30 seconds to source a lead. So, you know, those are the types of technologies that we've been building and kind of commercializing to the market.
all this which you showed now after the tracking of the mail, that is also a part of Signals?
That's right. We just released it a few weeks ago. It's called Insights. It's a feature within Signals. It's called the Company Insights. So in Signals we have the email notification tool that tells you when people open your email. We have the CRM integration tool that brings the email templates to your email client and automatically logs the stuff. And then we have the Company Insights tool that helps you to find these new companies to call very quickly.
All these are integrated in the OneSkin.
Yeah, the OneSkin. Go to getsignals.com and you have it. And then we have the mobile app here, which I don't think you can really see, but it's you know, I click on the mobile app, and you know, you can imagine. Let's see, where should I? You can imagine it's just basically the same signal stream right in my iPhone, right? So that's been really huge for me, and a lot of, like, even for our team's all inside sales, but even still, like, they go into meetings, they go home at night for their dinner with their spouse, they drive into work, you know. And if they see a Signals pop up and it's someone they've been trying to get for a month or so, you know, they tend to want to call them right away. So.
Right. Coming back to your, you know, to your sales management part. So you advocate sales management, of course, means quite a lot meetings with your sales team, weekly meetings, you know, monthly meetings, fortnightly meetings. Can you share some nugget there? What should be these meetings about? What should we talk in the first of the month? What should we talk in the middle of the month? Can you share some of your practices there?
Yeah, let me use a couple of slides just on that one. There's this process I called metrics-driven sales management and how I drove that. So you know, I think I really wish that I could, like, rename my sales managers sales coaches, because that's really where I want them to spend most of their time, is on sales coaching. That really is such a huge driver of sales productivity, is when you can you know, use effective coaching to get these people incrementally better every single time. And here's a model that I use to enforce sales coaching throughout a large organization. Is what I would do is, on the second day of every month, I would meet with sort of the VPs and directors under me. Each of them had, you know, 4 teams and maybe 40 reps under them. And we would literally spend like 2 hours, and we would go through each salesperson, and they would tell me, what is the skill you're working on, how did you choose that skill, and how are you going to coach them through that skill. And because that meeting occurred, I would go through, the directors had to sit down with each of the managers and go through that same information. And because that meeting occurred the day before, on the first day of every month, the manager would sit down with the salesperson to review their individual metrics and come up with a coaching plan. All right? So, and in the morning, they would all kind of individually review the metrics. So this creates a really nice cadence that is revolving around coaching and revolves around metrics, that everybody knows at the beginning of every month the metrics will be produced, and everybody can kind of see how they're doing. And this sort of review meeting with your manager, it's not like you show up and you're like, hey, Sudeep, you, like, obviously you need to work on this skill, and here's how we're going to do it. It's a very co-creation, empowering process. So it'd be more like, so Sudeep, here's the first, how did you do last month? You know, like how did you actually perform, just qualitatively speaking? Like, what did you do well, and what would you like to improve on? And so basically what then I would go into the first chart, and I say, okay, here's the first chart. This is on total activity, and here's where you rank. So what do you think about this? And then here's the connect rate, and then here's how many discovery calls you did, and here's how many demos you did, and here's how much revenue you closed, all compared to the rest of the team. So what do you take away from each of these observations? And now, based on that whole conversation, what's like the one area you'd like to work on? Because I really want to try to narrow it down to like one area to work on at a time. And then how would you like my help on that, right? So here's a really high-level view on that. So all the colors in this chart are the different salespeople on a small team, right? So there's, 5 salespeople here. And it's showing me how many leads did each one of them receive in the month, how many did they work in the month, how many demos did they deliver, and how much revenue did they close. And I can kind of see the different performances. So you see the first guy here in purple, getting lots of leads, working lots of leads, but almost the worst. He is the worst on the team in getting them to the demo stage, and actually it creates really bad revenue too. So he probably has a problem with the demo, and he definitely has a problem in when he works the lead, getting to them to the demo. So I want to start at the top and work on this area first, and it's represented by this conversion rate. Okay. So you can see he's the worst on that, right? Mm-hmm. And the first thing I want to ask is, can I learn more from the data, right? Can I double-click into that data to diagnose even further where there are deficiencies? And in this case, I can, right? So this is representing working the lead, getting to the demo stage. Well, that could either be he's working lots of leads, he's calling them, he's sending voicemails, but no one's picking up the phone, in which case this number would be low.
All right.
Or it could be that he's getting them to pick up the phone, but then they don't want to do the demo. Like they're not interested.
Right.
In which case this number would be low.
Right.
So I need to understand which is the issue, because if this is the issue, well then I need to look at I need to listen to the voicemails he's leaving. I need to look at the emails that he's sending. I need to look at how frequently he's sending that stuff to make, because that's causing the connect issue.
Right.
Versus if it's this guy, for example, like if it's this guy where he's got a high connect rate but a really low connected demo, then it's not the problem on the emails and voicemails. He's getting everyone on the phone. The problem's down here where he's not navigating that connect call well. He might not be breaking the ice well. He sounds boring. He's throwing up product features. He's not listening to what they need. He's not really selling the next stage in the sales process. And I need to listen to a bunch of connect calls and coach him on that, right? So that was really the process that we followed. Was I call it metrics-driven sales coaching, and it revolves around producing those numbers every single month and getting in this cadence and really holding your managers accountable to being great coaches and using the metrics to figure out the area that they want to improve on and then coming up with a really good coaching plan. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Another problem which quite a few of my friends out here in the floor has. What tool are you using? What tool are you using that help you all this data in a data visualized form?
Well, this was something that we built 6 years ago on top of Salesforce.com. So we invested heavily in a consultant to soup up Salesforce.com. These days, there are more tools to help with that stuff. We are commercializing some of those. So, we'll see how quickly we can get those out. I expect this year we'll get out some of those. There are also some tools out there. Like we do use Good Data internally to help aggregate tools. I personally really like Insight Squared, which is a really lightweight overlay on top of Salesforce, as well as like QuickBooks and other like non-sales tools to help you visualize things. There's a company called SalesView that helps you to produce some of these prospecting metrics really well. So we didn't have these advantages 7 years ago, but these days there's some pretty cool tools out there. So those are some of the ones that we use and we like.
Wow, wow, wonderful. Right, many a time when you don't look data in this visual form, you cannot decide upon. Right, Mark, that has been quite wonderful. I wish I don't, I will get more time of yours on hiring, on the, more of the, so when you make a down a list of the skill sets, how do you prioritize on which skill set to work on? How do you see that when it is done, when it is improved upon, all this carried through data? This is something I would have envied in my life. Would have worked for about, doing an intern under you, knowing and practicing more of this, you know, that's where it stands out. I will, so something, from your end at the last, to all of my friends out here, some piece of your last nuggets.
I think the one big area that we didn't touch on, just for a quick 1-minute nugget that was really critical to our success, was starting a blog early in your startup journey. I think a lot of people underappreciate the power of doing something like that, but that really is the starting point of your sales process and your demand generation journey. We started blogging 9 months before our product was even completed. We just knew that we wanted to build a future marketing platform to help startups and businesses get found on the internet. And we started to write about that. And because we did, we built a better product because we knew which messages were engaging to people, and we were able to have a dialogue on the blog with our buyers. And by the time we were done with the product 9 months later, we had 1,000 people signed up to our blog. We ranked in Google for hundreds of keywords because of those efforts, and it was very easy for us to get our launch our free trial and get a lot of demand internally. So my advice would be to do that, and to do it in a way by leveraging a young journalist. Journalists are not expensive these days, and they're very, very talented. And oftentimes you can go to a local university and find one as an intern to spend half a day a week at your company, and use that person to interview you as the executive and interview the smart people at your company on the mission of what you're trying to do. Not about your product, but about the problems that you hope to solve and the education that you often have to give to prospects early in the sales conversation. Just do that process. Find that journalist. Have them interview you. Have them write ebooks. Have them write blog articles. It's not expensive. It doesn't take a lot of time, of your time. And I guarantee you that will be one of the things you look back on as the key success drivers of your startup.
Right. I will absolutely implement that. We do face that problem, getting relevant content, constant supply. It sometimes means that I have to stop doing everything and start writing a blog, writing a content. Sometimes time pressure doesn't allow us to do it. We need to nurture journalists, create journalists, create writers out there.
Yeah, take it off your shoulders. Don't take it on yourself. Put the pressure on. That's the hard part. Find the person. But once you do, it's their job to write the content. You're the expert. They don't have to be an expert in your domain. You're the expert. So is your executive counterpart. So is your sales team. Have one of you be interviewed each week, and let this journalist do their magic of picking your brain and putting something on paper that sounds really nice, So yeah, if you could leverage that, it'd be really powerful.
Oh, right, Mark. Wonderful. Thanks a lot. We might have quite a few more questions. There are a few of my CEO friends who were not able to attend, who said me to share this webinar, they might have some advanced questions with you. So I don't know, but I will request you in this platform in a later stage, if there are few more advanced questions and these people can directly ask you, can we get some, of your time again? That will be an humble request.
Yeah, sure. I mean, send them over to me, and we can do that. So,
right. Mark can also
you guys can have
his email ID. Why don't you share your email ID so that
yeah, my email is it's Mark M-A-R-K at HubSpot.com. Don't abuse it, but just send me questions that you have, and if you have questions about the Get Signals product at getsignals.com, some of that stuff may not have been turned on. Some of it may be in beta, so if you want access to some of it that's in beta, you can send me a note, but it's Mark, M-A-R-K at HubSpot.com.
Mark@HubSpot.com. Right, and friends, I have been using HubSpot, and some of my clients here out there, we have also implemented it. I never knew that you have already launched this inside. I am sorry there, I didn't check out. We will absolutely check this out, and of course, searching around data at number of screens, we waste time in collecting the data, right? If this tool helps there, it will definitely improve on the productivity.
That's right.
Right. Thanks, Mark. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Sudeep. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Oh, great. Cheers.